Welcome back, everyone, and welcome if you're new to the channel. We're going to talk about the astrology for this first quarter square to the moon, the quarter phase. It's waxing, and we're going to do this through a psychological lens and an astrological lens. So if this is something you're into, let's get to it and take a look at how this plays out. I'm going to share the chart here. Uh, so this is Thursday, the 23rd, when the moon is squaring the sun here. The sun has moved on to Taurus, and the moon is in Leo. I think one of the most significant things that we've got here is an opposition to Pluto. At this point, it's a gibbous opposition, but it's going to move all the way through into a full phase. And oops. So I think that is going to highlight to us and bring opportunities to us to have people reflect back where we might feel insecurities about moving forward with whatever we have started in Aries. We've had some movement here. If you remember last time, we had Saturn and Neptune spread apart, and Mercury and Mars were culminating into Saturn. And so that was teaching us how to let go of parts of us that have initiated things in the past, possibly in a reactive way or felt urgency. And, we talked about how we can stay present during those times and avoid the urge to jump and act to, establish security. And so now that we've moved forward a little bit and we've got Mars and Mercury in a new phase to Saturn, I think we're bringing this into reality in a different way. And I think this Mars and Mercury now are starting to culminate into Jupiter in a last quarter square. So we've got two types of energy here. We've got a first quarter square, the sun to the moon, and we've got a last quarter square, which is Mercury and Mars to Jupiter. So what's the difference here? In EA, they teach us that a first quarter square is a crisis in action. We're taking action to establish security. And a last quarter square is a crisis in consciousness. And we're trying to understand how to change from an external validation to an internal understanding of who we are. And so I think that what's going on here is this last quarter square from Jupiter to Mars and Mercury is it's an opportunity to change the way that we feel and think about these our underlying beliefs about why we're doing things. Um, we may have things come up as to why are we nervous and have self-doubt and worry about it. First of all, we've got some gibbous energy here. We've got an inconjunct with the North Node, which is where we're trying to move to, which is going to require an internal adjustment. And where does that internal adjustment come from? I believe it comes from the South Node on the other side in Virgo. And so, what's the Virgo energy about? It can be about self-critical parts of us that come up, and it can be about self-doubt, not feeling good enough to do what we want to do. And that can create managers in our part systems that try to work to establish worth and value. Because if that's what they feel is there is none, they're trying to protect exiled parts of us that don't feel like we have the self-worth and value. And so these parts have formed a protective strategy to manage that so that we don't have to look that. It's hard to look directly at parts of ourselves that we feel aren't up to par, that aren't good enough. And so the human psyche, as I said before, is quite an amazing thing, and it can hide that from itself. And so how do we work with this? Let's talk about the tools of IFS. This is where I think it's super valuable. We talked before about the center of the chart being self energy, and how what we're trying to do is expand self energy so that we can relate to these parts of ourselves in a way that's not trying to overpower them, or feel like we're just flooded with shame and doubt, and that way we can lead ourselves through this process. And I'm going to say this probably a lot of times on this channel. These journeys are a lot more helpful if you have somebody that's skilled at guiding you through them. Finding a good IFS therapist is a great idea to be able to work through some of these parts of yourselves. But I feel like looking at the astrological weather gives us a map of what parts might be coming up, how they can come up, and how to work with them. So let's keep looking at this. If we're sitting with these parts, they may be trying to manage this by working to show and get recognition so that it can bring an outside validation of self-worth and value in. And I think it's no mistake that you're looking at Venus and Uranus here in the final degrees of Taurus. And Uranus moving into Gemini is going to be a big change. I really think that's going to be significant, and we're going to feel that. And so um, I think that learning how to make sure and give ourselves this heart check to establish our motivations for moving forward brings us back to this Venus culmination with Uranus. Uranus tries to break us free from the known. And what is known here? Like the known is comes back to Pluto. How are we attached to ways of proving self-worth and value? Pluto's just finished its journey from through Capricorn, and it's still churning up new ground into Aquarius, where it's just settling into a 20-year transit through Aquarius. Where this happens on your chart is a big deal. I think it's worth looking into and understanding what house it's in, what kind of things it's going to be activating for you personally. If you guys are interested in doing that with me, I've got a link to my website. We can set up a time and go over your chart and look at what these transits mean for you personally. It can really dial it in and help us, to establish where the work is and what we can do to, become more self-led and to move through these in a way that we're not attached to something. Because if we're trying to work to prove our self-worth, that implies something. It implies a lack of self-worth, and that can be uncomfortable, right? I mean, nobody wants to feel that. And constantly searching for a way to fill that void from getting recognition from other people, from trying to do the thing that society says we should do to be a good person. I think that's where we need to revisit our values and our needs, and what are the needs of these parts that we have come up that possibly are coming from a place of insecurity. um, and I think that this last quarter square from Jupiter to Mars and Mercury are going to highlight the places where we don't feel safe. And that activates a protection strategy to establish safety. But like I said, we just went over this. All of these protection strategies come from a place of lack. And trying to meet these parts of ourselves and reintegrate them and bring them into the fold and embrace them and understand and appreciate what they are trying to do for us to protect us is the important thing. This North Node in Pisces, we're trying to, like, we've got a lot of spiritual warrior energy here. And how can we surrender to ourselves and rest in the fact that we are enough, that it comes from inside. Like this comes from inside. The Mars in Aries, I believe, can bring up anger, and there, and from an inner psychological point of view, what does that anger look like? Especially if you're somebody that is that feels that they need to contain their emotions. Contained anger will eventually go into the corner, that part of ourselves, because it's not self energy, right? The self energy comes from this, from the C's, the 8 C's: compassion, care, caring. Once again, I'll list the 8 C's so that we can review them and take a look at it. And that's our check. That's our heart check. Are we coming from this place, or is there insecurity, urgency, anger, anything that doesn't come from these parts, from that self energy? Those are parts, and they're there to protect us. And so trying to understand the why is going to help us to see them, to meet them, and to be able to speak for them. And that's the goal. Because if we can understand their motivations, what they're afraid that will happen if they don't do this job of protecting us, then we can speak for them. And that's where we start to become more self-led. And this happens in cycles. It's not something that happens right away, but I believe that all this culmination from the Mars, or from the Neptune Saturn culmination that happened, that took months and months at the end degrees of Pisces, and now is new phase. It's time to take action on this, and it's time to lay into and use leverage of these tools that we have to help establish more security in ourselves. So I hope that helps to move through. I think there's one more thing that I want to talk about here, and as this continues, I'm gonna forward this a couple of days here, and it meets right here. The moon happens to be right here at the last degree of Leo, as Lucifer, the asteroid Lucifer, turns direct. This has been something that's been going on for a while. It passed over the south node, stationed retrograde, and moved back across the south node. And now, right now, which I think is significant, Venus and or Uranus just moved into Gemini here. Venus is in new phase and in Gemini, and they're passing Sedna. Sedna is about regeneration and recovering parts of ourselves that have been rejected. It's a shamanic energy, and Lucifer gets a bad rap. I want to prop up one of the astrologers that I've learned a lot from. Jordan Smith. She has a great video about this Lucifer transit, and goes into great detail about Lucifer. Lucifer is the light bearer. And I know that a lot of times it can be considered an evil. And I don't like to go as far as evil. I think that that takes a great deal of work to get to that point. And there's not very many of us doing that, because that would suggest to me that you're consciously resisting connection with the light, and you're moving forward in a way that you're aware of what you're doing. And I think that in this case, we weren't aware. And the retrograde status here, where he's crossed over and come back across this south node, is a calling for us to become aware of these parts of ourselves that that feel that I'm not good enough. I should just give up. I can't do this. And that's a temptation to stay in the darkness and and work to earn this security. But the way forward is the polarity point to this, and that's the Pisces side. And it's to learn that we're always enough. We've been enough from the beginning. We're always going to be enough. And just recognizing that and being able to trust in the peace and the security of that, the beauty of that. It's like a flower that's bloomed. One of the reasons that I call my astrology soul flower astrology is because that's the goal, is how can we come into full bloom as a person, as an identity, and identify with that part of ourselves that's self-led, that's at peace, that's at rest in who we are. So I think that we've talked enough about this. The way to meet these parts of ourselves, like I said, is to sit with them. We never want to try to reject them, because if we try to reject them, you know, that comes from a place of fear and shame and not good enough. And so let's work with these parts of ourselves and move forward and accomplish the goals that we've set out. I'm going to recommend that each of us set goals for the new moon each cycle. And with an Aries new moon, you can set a 30-day goal, a 6 month goals, because every 6 months we're going to have a full moon in Aries, after when the sun is up here in Libra. And then you can also do a year-long goal. What are our year goals? Like the astrological year starts in Aries, and we're just beginning that. It's spring in the northern hemisphere. I know that it's fall in the southern hemisphere. You guys can follow these same things. So I'm going to leave it at that. I hope you guys can get some value. I hope this is of service to you, and I look forward to coming back and doing some more. And so I'm going to stop sharing this and bid you all farewell until next time. Thank you.